Welcome to the Continuous Transformation Podcast, where spirit and science meet and creatively merge to give birth to the future. Disclaimer: high risk of life-transforming perspectives.
This is the best time to begin your continuous transformation process.
Your host is Advaitananda, a visionary, influencer, and scientist with a quantum physics background and more than 30 years' experience of yoga, tantra, and meditation practice and teaching. Episode 10, Behind the Iron Curtain and Stolen Revolutions, Part 3, The Great Reset, or A Great Awakening, with interviewer Sahajananda J. Porslund. There is a battle between the Great Reset and the Great Awakening. Can we really choose between these two alternatives? A friendly talk about the major phenomena arising in the world today with Advaitananda and Sahajananda J. Porslund.
We create an unsustainable economy. We created an unsustainable society. It's a reality. We don't even know why we created it.
Is there a way for power not to corrupt?
Yeah, it's to keep it in. When you keep it in, it's empowering your soul. Intelligence, without being in touch with yourself, in your deeper self, is starting to destroy the world around you because you start to interfere in the natural order.
Why do we as human beings buy into this very simple stories where there's a good guy and a bad guy, and even if we know there's something wrong here?
It's because we are simplifying reality instead of expanding our consciousness. The answer is inside you. It's true, we are so unused with that. Since it needs a reset, it must have been something wrong with it. And if it was something wrong, we would like to know before anything who was in charge, and also to hear a viable explanation of what went wrong, because this is the essence of learning. Hello everyone, I'm Advaitananda and this is the Continuous Transformation Podcast. Today we continue on a topic that is directly and indirectly affecting our life. The almost generalized crisis, and more precisely the two major solutions that we hear about today. One of them, which is called the Great Reset, and another one, also great, the Great Awakening. The Great Reset is a solution heavily pushed forward by the elites today, presented to all of us as a convenient solution to a seemingly no-exit situation. We are told that the situation today has no reasonable exit but this Great Reset. On the other hand, we hear whispers of a Great Awakening, which is something almost in the area of wishful thinking. Most of its arguments today of this Great Awakening are valid mostly for those who believe in what many today conveniently and superficially call conspiracy theories. So it's something that appears at the margins, we can say, of our society. However, it has a widespread. The promoters of the Great Reset are led by Klaus Schwab, the founder of World Economic Forum back in 1971, and its current CEO. In his book, which is called COVID-19, The Great Reset, Schwab promotes ideas of what he calls stakeholder capitalism, which in reality is a socio-political and economical Frankenstein monster that contains parts of all systems that we have failed until now. So practically is a conglomerate of partial solutions trying to create something viable from spare parts. The general ideas behind this project look good on paper. But let's remember, so the communist ideas and ideals looked good in the Communist Manifesto. In practice, they were millions of victims of it. At a closer look, something seems terribly wrong with this Great Reset. And before even understanding what went wrong, we are rushing through it. Let's see some ideas as context. There are people who are promoting the Great Reset who are in fact in charge with world economy and politics, it's at least the majority of it, for the last few decades. Professor Schwab himself founded the World Economic Forum in 1971, and ever since they were promoting all kinds of solutions to the world today. From a certain perspective, we can say that they shaped the world economy and world politics that we have today, and that now the same people come and say, quote, we need to reset and reshape, end quote. And of course, they do that without giving any explanation about what went wrong. And more interestingly, without telling us who was in charge. Since it needs a reset, it must have been something wrong with it. And if it was something wrong, we would like to know before anything who was in charge, and also to hear a viable explanation of what went wrong, because this is the essence of learning. Of course, they cannot say that because it will reveal that the same people who did the wrongdoings before are the ones who try to cover their incompetence and abuses with this idea of a great reset. It sounds to me, when we put it from this perspective, very much like the idea of carrying out and dumping in the ocean the rubble after a terrorist attack before a serious investigation is made. Or we can see this mentality in what we have seen in Microsoft during the years. Every one of you who had a computer, a PC, know the famous system failure message, to which Microsoft company was telling us, just reset. Just press the reset button and it will work, without giving any explanations about what happened. So practically, this is a Microsoft solution. Just reset the system, without giving or even bothering to give us explanations why the system failure appeared. Of course, it's not a coincidence that one of the active promoters of this doctrine today in the world is no other than Bill Gates, the boss of Microsoft, who obviously, we can say, suffers of micro and soft. Many saw through the pandemic smokescreen created by the fanatics of this neo-Marxist doctrine, and many people call it out. Even in Forbes magazine in November 30th, 2020, we find, quote, the Great Reset is another example of wealthy, powerful elites salving their conscience with faux efforts to help the masses, and in the process make themselves even wealthier and more powerful, end quote. Others call this doctrine, quote, coronavirus themes rebranding, end quote. Or others, quote, an attempt by the rich to make themselves look good, end quote. The same situation appear today in many domains of our life. Of course, to some of us, this might look like some empty talks between people who have nothing to do with their time. They are wealthy enough to waste time in their living room meeting and talking about such nonsense. But here are some additional information that will show the implications in the world today. In May 15, 2018, Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, in partnership with World Economic Forum, hosted what they called the CLADEX exercise. In this theoretical exercise, they included even video footage of fake new reports about what? A pandemic scenario. They have discussion panels with real policymakers in the world assessing that the governments and the industry are not prepared for a global pandemic. Remember, this was May 2018. In a little more than a year later, 18th of October 2019, same John Hopkins, together with World Economic Forum and this time Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, ran what they call Event 201. In this, they ran a scenario of the world economy totally shaken by lockdowns, riots on the streets, and the world pandemic. They also ran scenarios where electronic surveillance measures are implemented in order to stop the spread and bring back the society to what they call in that exercise, interestingly, a new normal. To make things even creepier, the organizers of Event 201 on 24th of January 2020, they made a public statement, quote, "For this scenario, we modeled a fictional coronavirus pandemic, but we explicitly stated that this was not a prediction," end quote. Why would they feel to mention that this is not a prediction in this situation? Interestingly, just few weeks later, another partner on Event 201, World Health Organization, declared a real, so they claim, coronavirus pandemic. So it gives us something to think about, considering how deep implications all this information give when we correlate them. Now, somehow opposing this dogma, because all these Great Reset ideas, they have all the signs of a dogma, even a religious dogma, which is pushed forward by these fake saviors of humanity. So opposing this dogma, we have the idea of what is called today a Great Awakening. This idea is not that utopian as it looks at the first sight, and in my opinion, it has more chances to succeed than the insane project of the Great Reset. Of course, for that we need deeper knowledge. In short, the experience of a human conscience from the last century, from the last 2 centuries, we can say, of a togetherness in the world, this experience of being together, acknowledging the existence of the planet as such, while this togetherness fighting to each other to death, all this experience of having nowhere to go unless we solve our problems will somehow result in a jump in the way we look upon ourselves and the way we relate to each other. The process of awakening is a result of accumulated new experiences, and it is often triggered by an experience that is subjectively perceived as a crisis. Of course, with all these experiences accumulated today, we can say that good and bad experiences, a crisis become the catalyst of a great awakening. The experience is here, and of course, the access to information today makes it even stronger, because we are not only having our world experience, what we see, the small portion of reality that we directly experience in our everyday life, but we access almost everyone's else experiences through media and social media. And we also have the crisis created for purposes that are doubtful, in my opinion, but still can serve, I would say, as a trigger for awakening people. This is why, as a side observation here, denying history and alienating people from each other, keeping people distant from each other today, serve the Great Reset agenda, while trying to prevent the Great Awakening. Debating further these topics, I invited today again my friend Sahajananda Porslund, a freelance journalist, founder of Copenhagen Conscious Talks, which is a platform for responsible free talk and a forum for healthy questioning the paradigms of today's society. Sahajananda is a yoga and tantra teacher in Atman International Federation. He's teaching in Copenhagen and in Stockholm. He teaches from experience and inspires others to follow the path of personal transformation. Welcome, Sahaj. Welcome forward in these talks.
Thank you very much, Shava.
So, how is going the world today? What shall we continue to debate?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very compelling introduction you made here to our talk, and we can say this is the third part of also for new listeners and viewers. Is the third part of our journey into stolen revolutions, iron curtains falling, and what's going on in the world today. So in the first two, just to maybe introduce also the new piece to what we talked so far. So in the first chapter, we talked a lot about your experiences with communism, also in your teenage years, and in general how people in a mysterious, strange way actually kind of wanted this totalitarian regime. And I think also in our talk today, we can maybe elaborate a bit on this, how this works. And you also talked about some of these more political events which happened during the fall of the Ceausescu, with the miners arriving in Bucharest, and how the whole thing was staged. And especially in the second part,
dressed in black. They were all black.
Yeah, and you see the same symbols which were used back then, also with the BLM and the Antifa symbols. Is basically it's a copy paste of the symbols which was used during communism. So there are some at least very tight symbolic links there, and beside also have ideological links, of course. And then in the second part, we talk more in depth about the actual stolen revolution in '89, which I'm sure many haven't heard the real story. So I really invite the new listeners to go back and listen part 1 and part 2. You can still, I'm sure, follow this one, but as a background of what we're going to talk in this one. Also about the killings during the stolen revolution there is shocking to hear how these power Mongols are basically sacrificing people's life, even hiring, like you explained, merchant soldiers and setting them up and killing them as part of the media show.
To make it credible, to sell the revolution. Of course, you need to have a little bit of paint blood there.
Yeah, it's crazy, and related with your introduction now, yeah, I think it would be great to dive more into the current situation and look a bit upon, for example, we can talk about how is this relation between reality and fiction, because I think this is something which for many people today are really not so clear anymore. I mean, we have now news coming out, real or not, but still we know the technology exists of this deep fake technology, where you see people questioning if Joe Biden is really in the recordings. I mean, are they just using green screens? And this deep fake technology is another person, they also the face, or it's like people don't know what to believe anymore. And both sides, what you explained now, are using this sophisticated storytelling strategies. Maybe this on this side of the Great Reset, they are using it even more. And I would like you to also speak more about this, how these basically how human language influence our consciousness, and how these storytelling strategies are used to manipulate with people.
Yeah, this is a great chapter in itself, of course, because the whole idea of controlling one's consciousness and one's options and even one's view upon the world is not new. It's very old. In the Roman Empire, they gave people bread and circus in order to keep people in a state of, you can say, acceptance of what they call Pax Romana, the Roman peace. And actually today what we see as an attitude of this power that feel that they are civilizing the world, they are making the world a better place. This is a slogan that we hear from all tyrannies throughout history. No tyrant in history is known who came there declaring, I'm a tyrant, I don't care about you guys, I just care about myself. All tyrannies, especially collective tyrannies. When it is one-person tyranny, yeah, there is a little more honesty, if you can call like that, honesty in their approach. But especially this kind of collective tyrannies like communism, fascism, and so on, neo-Marxism today, they are all speaking in these terms of convincing the masses that it is for their own good what we're doing here. We're the good people. It's unquestionable what we're doing. You cannot question the will of people. And of course, that's a very big discovery that was made by the occult circles. They noticed that when you have a leader, and that is the healthy possibility, you have a person that catalyzes the attention and leadership and carries the burden, the crown, so to speak, that leader can be sabotaged, that leader can be destroyed by the rest of the saboteurs that surround, and they can direct the society the way they want. But when you have a collective occult power, that is unquestionable. All you have to do is to confiscate the position of truth. We are the people. And when you say we are the people, you are unquestionable. Who are you? You are a person. And everybody who dare to question is a person, is not the people. And
which, by the way, is something they use on both sides.
Absolutely.
They both use this notion
nobody
of we the
assume
people.
responsibility, this is me. No, it's not me. We are a forum. We are the World Economic Forum. We are many. We are actually the people. And that kind of rhetoric is extremely dangerous. That kind of anonymous rhetoric. You see, this faceless mob that is now lynching publicly and is destroying the life of genius authors, of people who worked the entire life to build something, even if it's not the most correct thing, or maybe, well, contradict it if you must, but assume it. And all this faceless power, which mass media and especially now more social media made possible, you see, is doing exactly that. It becomes a tool for what? For the people behind the curtain to manipulate the masses, and thus using the masses as a glove in which they move exactly as they want their hand. So it's a very, very old idea, this one, that you can sway the opinion of the masses, but it's very difficult to sway the opinion of one person, one at a time. And therefore, that's why language, for instance, is used today, and it was used always to redefine the opinions. Yeah, you can call somebody domestic terrorist, and that's it. Even though that person actually proposed another idea. But of course, this is one thing that you can see as a concern always. Communists, Bolsheviks in Russia, the first thing they did was to redefine the terms and the institutions. Communists in my country, where I grew up, when they came to power, they defunded police and they rename it as militia, because militia is a term that gives this impression it's of people. It's a militia of people. It's not police anymore belonging to a small group of people, but is militia. They put the name. I mean, all the cars were carrying that label on it. And it became far more oppressive instrument than police was ever. Why? Because you cannot question it. You cannot even keep it accountable for any form of abuse because, hey, we're the militia. We are the people. Who are you questioning here? So it became extraordinarily oppressive and dangerous in the name of the highest ideal.
But how come is it that we as human beings, because I mean, it's obvious it's not just a one-time, let's say, failure of humanity. It's a repeated pattern in many cultural, many historical settings. Like you said, back to Rome. But why do we as human beings buy into this very simple stories where there's a good guy and a bad guy, and even if we know there's something wrong here, most people today buy into the new normal, buy into the social distancing
It's because we are simplifying reality instead of expanding our consciousness to include all the complexity of life itself. We just simplify reality by lowering our level of consciousness. So it is the result of us not evolving, but on the contrary, externalizing our attention. We forget about ourselves. We forget about the fact that we are gods. Practically, we are gods with amnesia. And therefore, we live like animals. And living like animals, we simplify reality. And of course, we like when somebody comes and say, I give you food. We don't even question, wait a second, where did you take that food? Because actually you took it from my storage and you resell it to me as better food. We don't even care about that. So
if it would be a village, it would be very obvious, that people would come and take the food from your barn and sell it on the market to you. But
when you take it from the nearby village or not nearby village, a village on the other side of the planet, and resell it here, or to put it more simple, when you just print the money, and with this money you buy anything which anyway carry no value from you to them, but they give you value from them to you. So all these tricks, scams that are so easy to detect when you pay attention, they are propagating today massively because we lost the most important part of this equation, ourselves. We're not aware of ourselves anymore, therefore we can't fulfill an inquiry. We cannot even have the courage, the power to fulfill an inquiry. That's why today the rulers of the society, the occult circles, are ruling by fear and desire. You want this? You have to do that. But if you don't do this, you will suffer that. This is the very simplified message that we see today everywhere. But a simplified message is successful in a simplified consciousness. And of course, how do you keep people in a simplified state, in a dumb state, let's put it straight? You give them pride. You make them proud. Because there is nothing more deadly, and that's why pride was regarded throughout history of humanity as one of the deadly sins. Not religiously sin, simply mistakes, errors. Because it makes you assume values that you don't have. And therefore you never question, maybe there is room in my life for more. Could it be that I can do better? Yes, actually you can. Then while doing better for yourself, you will not buy in all the temptations, strange things that others are telling you. You will be a little more skeptical, healthy skeptical, a little more questioning. Wait a second, is it really true what you're saying? Let me think about it for myself. Great reset. Why should I reset the system since I didn't create it? Why should I reset the system before you explain me what was wrong with the previous one? By resetting the system, by denying it, doesn't we create even more problems? Or are you trying to hide the fact that you created the system that you try to reset now? Because I would like to have a debate about that. Since you are the author of this system, please explain what went wrong, assume responsibility, and when you do that, you might have my credibility, my vote, my trust. So, okay, I follow you in the Great Reset. But that kind of attitude would require a higher level of consciousness, a higher level of self-awareness, a higher level of I-ness, if you want. And since that is actually decreasing today, since today we are so externalized with almost everything, we try to find solutions for our depression out in the world. We find solutions for our worries and anxieties, trying to fix the world for our shortcomings. So since this is the situation today, almost generalized and encouraged by our life system today, of course, there is a problem that is appearing again and again. And some people, driven by all kind of reasons, power, power drive is a desperate attempt to validate your life. You have a system of validation, and then you try to validate yourself by dominating others. But yeah, here you have it.
But maybe say a bit more about this with pride, because if you look at, on both sides, there's really what we consider today highly intelligent people, apparently, at least. Very well educated people, let's say, who have very sophisticated theory about social life, and somehow still, why don't they put these simple questions? Why do they jump into these narratives without really asking these fundamental questions? Because apparently they are intelligent. There's very smart people, at least.
No, it's not apparently. No, I don't think it's apparent. It's a real intelligence. But you see, intelligence without soul, without heart, becomes tyranny. Intelligence without being in touch with yourself, your deeper self, is starting to destroy the world around you, because you start to interfere in the natural order. And we saw that example time and again. Very intelligent solutions led to what? Ecological disasters, led to all kind of strange things. Time and again. But on the paper, it looked fabulous. It looks intelligent. It looked like, yeah, that's the solution. Let's go for it. So, no, it's the fact that we don't cultivate enough the development of the person, the inner development of the person. You see, for instance, we lost moral values today. That's why I brought pride. Pride is opposite to any moral values. Yeah? But people are encouraged to be proud of yourself, irrespective to what you do. To be proud of yourself is exactly like you stink because of objective reasons, but you put perfume on top. Actually, this is how perfumes were invented, let's remember, by the upper class in France, who was stinking because they have these wigs, and they didn't wash, because I don't think they have showers possibility at that time, but anyway, washing. And because they were stinking, they invented perfumes. So it's a mentality that human beings have to cover the shortcomings instead of transforming. And together with the failure of spiritual systems, together with the divorce between spirituality and science, which created heartless science and religions, all this contributed together to what we have today. So it is not a coincidence that we have that mentality today, because we try to cover. We try to cover for our shortcomings. Yeah, that's the reason why in ancient systems even they were saying, instead of being proud, start to be aware, acknowledge. Yes, it's more difficult to acknowledge with humbleness that I might be wrong, I might be right, it's true. But if you're right, don't worry that if you are humble, righteousness doesn't disappear. But false ideas will disappear because you will have a chance to see them. But when you are proud, you're blind. You're becoming arrogant. No, I know everything. I cannot be wrong. And when you add to that kind of character the idea, not only you can't be wrong, but you are the people, that's it. You can kill in the name of that idea, which they did, and they keep doing. All the people who speaks in the name of people today, they are becoming a danger to themselves and to the people, which is proven by history time and again. And what are they doing today? Encouraging people to do what? Cancel history. Why do you think they do that? Of course, because history can reveal that they are fake, that it's a dangerous narrative. And you see, cancel culture, by the way, is a reaction strongly proposed today because access to information is creating a critical mass for awakening. There are more and more intelligent people today who start to correlate information if they have access to. So when they will see, wait a second, same sentences, same expressions we saw in the beginning of 20th century, we saw in the utopic circles of 19th century, where all the poisonous ideas were born, which ravaged the 20th century. We saw that if we read the history. Same ideas that were constantly re-emerging throughout an entire century, now they are regurgitated and sold as the new normal, the great society, the future, the progress of the society. And there will be people who will start to healthy question the authorities, healthy question the solutions that are provided and so on, which is good. And the solution is the primitive solution, I would say. It's quite ridiculous if you look at it, is let's cancel history. Why shall we look back? It's unhealthy to look back. It makes me suffer. You haven't been part of that, but you might learn something. And yes, learning by definition is not easy. It's not easy for the ego. It's not easy for your status quo. Because learning well transforms your entire perspective. And yes, it's exposing the old ways. It's exposing that you might have been wrong until now. But being wrong is not bad. Being wrong and acknowledge it is actually healthy. That's the real progress.
So imagine if you were in the backstage room of the event 201 with Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and all their buddies. What would the talk have been about there? How would they talk about the strategy which they launched? Because, I mean, are they
in
just
very humanitarian terms, I'm telling you. I met few people who were not part of that event, who were actually part more than 15 years ago in a special place in Zurich where these doctrines were promoted, decided, and the terms of talk were very humanitarian, almost like Christic attitude. We are the saviors of humanity. We try to save humanity from its own evil. This is where they started to promote ideas that humanity is a virus to the planet, and we have to cure the planet, save the planet from humanity. These are the terms of, and of course, full of fake compassion. Of course, we cannot save everyone. Naturally, there will be some sacrifices, and there will be some necessary accepted risks in all this. These are the terms of talk, and this is how it's sold in the higher circles of society, not in public. You hear sometimes some of the leaders who are a little more arrogant and full of themselves and their savior positions, such as Bill Gates, by the way, who promotes his company's motto, just reset it, just restart it, into today's world, and who has eyes to see can recognize that this is the pattern, the simplified pattern of that consciousness. So you hear them talking publicly even about these fundamental ideas, which on the paper look good, but is the same rushed, superficial solution that they promoted 3-4 decades ago. So of course, a healthy questioning will be, is this the right thing to do? Same people who did this old system, they try to reset now. Why should we listen to them? But they found this genius solution. Hey, we need an event. We need to create an event. And an event held public. The health of the public is something of a general concern. Otherwise, you end up in all kinds of discussions of doctrines and so on. But nobody questions the public health. Nobody dares to question the public health. When it comes to public health, you're a terrorist if you say anything else but what the representatives of the public health is saying. But if you look back 1 year only, World Health Organization gave several contradictory statements. Now, of course, if you are just watching from time to time the news which are told to you, you will not see it as very severe. But if you are a scientist, that's reason for being extremely worried. I mean, these are the people who are shaping the decisions that we are all getting affected by. When these people are coming with a statement and then later on they contradict themselves with absolute nonchalance, saying, "Oh, what? That's normal." And when anyone else question, "Hey, that's not normal to question." Well, you just contradicted yourself. And if it's normal to do that, it's normal for me to question. So when you summarize, when you look back, just 1 year, you don't need to cancel history. You need to look back 1 year and you see the fact that is obviously an unhealthy push. A vaccine that was almost never tested. Compare with the standards. Compare with their own standards. It's pushed forward now, and then imagine the thing. They put a vaccine on the market, then they stop vaccinating people because there are side effects. How come that you guaranteed that you studied it very thorough and no side effects like this blood clotting? Hello, this is something extremely bad.
And many cases of it.
Many cases.
But, no, but what we know about.
The question is, how can you trust such organization? How can you trust such organization organization don't question themselves in a healthy way, who don't apologize, who don't come forward and say, wait a second, we were wrong there, we need to reconsider. That would be a scientific approach. That would be a healthy scientific approach according to the basic standards of science. But no, it's a political organization. Only politicians have the arrogance to contradict themselves with a straight face, telling you lies which are contradicting their own previous lies with a straight face, and being even surprised when somebody in the audience remembers and question them, and being genuinely almost surprised. Only politicians are able for such a performance. And then, of course, another big question mark is there. Is this a political organization or is it a scientific organization or science-driven organization? obviously the first.
You have Bill Gates donating more than... I just have a map here, actually, which I prepared before the recording here, and it was a response. There's a network in Denmark which is called now the Rebels, the Corona Rebels, and there was a newspaper who laid out the entire network of all these people, like if it was a criminal network. And then they responded by laying out Bill Gates' network and showing how much money he donated to World Health Organization, to Johns Hopkins University, to Dr. Fauci's organization, and it's like billions of dollars hold, the funding from Bill Gates to these organizations.
But these things are promoted with the acceptance. I mean, they are just the front runners of a much deeper plan. Some lunatics that pretend to be scientists, and they put forward all kind of contradictory otherwise statements and half-truths and so on. They would never be able to shape the legislation. They will never be able to shape the structure of the society. They will never be able to promote the reset agenda should not be the cooperation of all other kind of circles or layers of power in the world. This doesn't work alone, of course. And of course that leads us to this need, when we are lost from ourselves, the need to be led, the need to be carried by an external force. When we externalize even our power, how do we do that? By forgetting of who we are and by constantly validating our existence from the others. Slowly, we lose power. We depend on an external power. The result of that, inevitable result of that, is that the very few who are collecting that power, they become almighty almost in the world today. And this is what happens today. And don't forget, power corrupts the soul. And you give.
Just about to ask you, is there a way for power not to corrupt? Because
it's to keep it in. When you keep it in, it's empowering your soul. When you collect external power, because let me tell you an interesting observation. People who hold power over other people, they don't control themselves, on the other hand. They don't know who they are. They are more desperate than anyone else to validate their existence. With other words, they have it smaller than everyone else's. That's why micro and soft. That's the problem. So because of that, they are desperate to validate themselves, more desperate than anyone else around. That's something that we forget. We have the impression, these people must be exceptional. No, they must be exceptionally inhibited, exceptionally biased. That's true. And they are desperate to reach to a level where they can validate existence by holding power over other people, by showing they matter, by showing they can save humanity. Well, the only one who showed valid signs of saving humanity sacrificed himself. He didn't come and save humanity with huge ego and giving to everyone lessons and saving them while being safe in a palace.
Hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland, which everybody know, like what Bill Gates now did and other of these big shots, buying all the farmland, which everybody knows if there's a case of war, you have the only thing which in value will survive is gold and farmland, basically. Maybe some properties which will not be bombed, but...
Well, in my opinion, it's more than that. It's the production of artificial food, which will be pushed forward massively in the next years, because artificial food can be produced by robots, by automatons. And that's what is the utopian society that this Great Reset is pushing forward. Normally, people don't look beyond the Great Reset. But if you carefully look to the ideas they promote between the lines of the Great Reset and sometimes in the lines of the Great Reset, and you draw the picture that is beyond the Great Reset, it's an utopian society that is promising that we will not have worries anymore, and if we stay home, working from home, we'll have a interconnected society that is extraordinary, and if we behave and we accept surveillance everywhere because the robots need to know how to serve us, and if we accept all that, we will practically have a perfect life, the life we have dreamed of, where everything is provided to us. All we need to do is to enjoy. The flaw
in that... That's the vision of transhumanism, I guess.
Exactly. Transhumanism is part of that, that program. And of course, it sounds good on paper, but again, the missing factor, which is a crime against humanity, is the human being itself. The human being is missing from the whole picture, the interior of the human being, only the exterior. You will be provided with everything. This is what we truly need? For instance, the biggest progress humanity have encountered was when we were in trouble. I'm not saying to create trouble. I'm saying to acknowledge the inner troubles and solve that. What will happen with a population that you keep home because they have nothing to do anymore? Robots are doing everything. A population that is so troubled inside. You will have an exponential growth of mental disease. You will have an exponential growth on suicide. You will have an exponential growth on depression, which will become a new normal of this utopian society. You will have degeneration even at the genetic level of the human species, which will be compensated by what? By machineries. People will replace organs with machineries, artificial organs, and so on, trying to patch an increasingly big problem. Well, that is also, if you prolong the lines, a little more of the Great Reset. It's just around the corner.
I even heard they talk about going from, let's say that one of the ideas of the transhumanism is basically to download the human consciousness into silicon-based life form. I mean, getting rid of carbon-based life forms, basically, organic life.
Which, of course, sounds very tempting in a certain way. Prolongation, silicon-based life can be reproduced much easier, and all these elements. But the idea is we don't yet control the subtle parts of our being. We don't yet even acknowledge. How do you download consciousness when you didn't even acknowledge it yet fully? How do you... Let me tell you one thing that is a fact. I know it as a scientist. I worked in an institute for artificial intelligence as a scientific researcher. I know these things from inside. Decades ago, we already have successful research in interaction between human consciousness and computers. We have already built devices that can be controlled by the thoughts of the operator. And yet the project is in lockdown, is stalling. And
at least officially.
Not only officially. I mean, the performance is there, but we cannot use it for a very simple reason. They didn't find out how to train the operators. Because if your computer can read your thoughts and transform it into text, and you try to send an email, and during your email, a stray thought comes in.
A lot of Freudian slips there.
A lot of Freudian slips will have there, and practically that kind of system will never be used because you are not having control of your consciousness, not control of the machine. So it's a fact that that direction of study and research was slowed down not by the machinery, by the human factor. So again, this is the real problem, and the implications of this kind of technologization are far deeper reaching than we care to admit. And unfortunately, the almost zero morality of these circles of power is becoming extremely dangerous. I remember seeing few years ago an advertising that was promoted in the 50s about the fact that nuclear radiation, is not harmful, is actually healthy. And in the advertising, you see a woman, pregnant woman, with a glass of water, and she was scanning it with the Geiger-Müller counter, which showed hyper radioactivity there, and she would drink the water saying, "See, it is healthy for me and my baby."
Oh my God.
It was an advertising. Promoted by whom? By the same scientists and by the same politicians in bed with those scientists, which later on didn't even apologize for, hey, we were terribly wrong. Actually, we lied. We lied because we wanted to promote nuclearization, we wanted to promote nuclear power and all this, and there were side effects of it that were discovered. But we couldn't wait for those things to be solved.
I heard even that recently it came out that it was IBM who created the computation system for the Holocaust, for the concentration camps during Nazism.
Well, of course, these are other examples of the implications of these ideas. The very big problem, as you can see, in all these elements is lack of morality. And lack of morality is the result of you forgetting yourself. Because the more you are aware of yourself, the more you have a natural moral compass. It's a proven fact. The less aware you are, the more you depend on the others. The famous experiments that tried actually to justify the Nazi concentration camps and so on, the famous experiments in the 60s, where a person in a very controlled environment is asked to give electric shocks, for instance, to a patient, to a participant to the experiment. And they are asked to give increasingly bigger electric shocks until it's written there, deadly shock. But just because they are told, please do it, it's okay, it's fine, it's not your fault, it's not... And the authority was very unquestionable. It was people dressed as scientists and so on. Of course, it was a fake. They didn't really give electric...
The Millman experiment, I think it was called?
Yes. And it was repeated in several ways during time. And you can find now on the internet extremely many versions of this experiment, constantly proving that the immense majority of people can be persuaded to do absolutely immoral things, if from a position of authority. Now, of course, the question is, can this be avoided? And from my direct experiments, I showed clearly that it is possible in one way. Start to be in touch with yourself, with your deeper self. Then you'll have empathy, for instance. Then you can never press the fire button of a drone that will destroy the life of hundreds of people in a wedding somewhere on the other side of the planet, just because you suspect that at the wedding there is some people who never harmed you directly attend, but they are labeled as dangerous by some faceless organization you don't even know. You'll never be able to press that button. So, and do all kind of other immoral things in the process, because you have a kind of a natural moral compass. But keeping people in this state of alienation from themselves, even aggravated by social distancing, by, hey, don't stop being so much in touch with each other. Because when we are reflecting on each other, somehow we also increase a little bit the self-awareness. With friends, for instance. Friends give you feedback about what? About yourself. People close to you reflect you, and you have more chances to start to look at yourself. Thus, having what? A higher moral value. Thus, having a moral compass. Thus, being unreliable for the society which count on your immorality.
If we look on the other side, so now, like, having talked about, let's say, the Great Reset and the whole mentality and ideology, Do you believe in the other side? Do you believe in the Great Awakening? And what would it take actually for this marginal group of people who now, let's say, are like waking up to a certain point to reach a critical mass and actually kind of turn it around? Is it possible?
Yeah, not only that I believe in it, but as you know me well, in the last 25 years I'm teaching, I'm following a path of self-transformation and development. I even proved with measurements that the human consciousness can be upgraded immensely. So not only I believe, but for me it's not anymore a question of belief. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of when, not if. Because it happens and we carry the gene of awakening in every person. This is why they are afraid of this. That's why they rush through a reset. Because resetting fast will keep people busy. Let me give you an example. It's a beautiful joke I like on this, about the Great Reset versus Great Awakening. On the street there was a guy walking with a big bag carrying on his back. And from time to time, he would stop and shake powerfully the bag. And then he will take it on again and move. Another person observing that bizarre behavior started to follow because he wanted to understand what's going on here. He couldn't stand anymore because this continued for a while. And he reached out to this person with the bag and asked him, if you don't mind asking, can you clarify this mysterious behavior you have? What do you have in that bag and why do you stop from time to time? And he said, it's very simple, no problem. I carry lab mice. Lab mice? Yes, but why that behavior? If I continue walking, mice will start to eat the fabric of the bag and they will start to fall out. But if I shake them again and again, they will not have time to eat in one place until they break free. In other words, he gave them reset. Often they can break free. To translate it in these languages.
So they forgot what they were doing, actually.
Not forget. Yeah, they forget for a while. They got shaken up. Then they start to figure out, we can eat this. And they started to. But then just before they succeed, another reset comes. That's what happens. We are the mice lab, and they try to give another shake, another reset, so we don't have the time to break free. You know, it was a great wise man, Sri Ramakrishna, who lived in India, who last century, who said at some point, it takes 3 days, 3 full days, it took him 3 full days to reach enlightenment on any spiritual path. He tried many spiritual paths. He was not belonging to Hinduism, or he tried all of them. He even tried some less known spiritual systems, and every time he reached enlightenment in 3 days. When I heard that statement, I made the joke, this is the reason why weekends are only 2 days, because in this way we never reach enlightenment. It's like 2 days and reset, 2 days and reset. If it will be 3 days, oops, you will have a lot of enlightened people on the streets. And an enlightened person is a person who is aware of himself or herself, is a person who cannot be persuaded with all kind of strange, completely unfounded ideas that we are given today, and they swallow completely unchewed and undigested. So that is the relationship between Great Reset and Great Awakening. Now, it's true. You see, my great hope, to use the third great, which is hope, my great hope is the fact that, like usual, people which are superficial, they shoot themselves in the foot. You know that expression. By keeping people home for longer and longer time, they give time. They give the 3 days of Ramakrishna. They give the 3 days, and more people, from what I know, from what I've seen, they started to healthy questioning their options in life. They started to see, wait a second, maybe I will shut down a little bit the news for a little while. Of course, it's very difficult to do that because we have a habit of depending on agitation outside. We are addicted to news today more than heroin. So for this reason, an approach that is very healthy is to remain in silence, so to speak. Meditation, concentration exercises, all the exercises with yourself, they have as a result the capacity to awaken. And you see, we create, as I started in the introduction, we create the conditions of a critical mass of experience. We have already centuries of experimenting again and again, resetting the system, falling back to tyranny, resetting the system, falling back, calling for tyranny again and again. And all that on a background of this otherwise artificially created crisis, nevertheless a deep crisis because it came on top of our real crisis. So practically it's a hijacked feeling of crisis. These are actually the ingredients of a great awakening, or an awakening on a generalized base, a statistically great awakening. So yes, I have great hopes that this happens now, and that more and more people start to realize that, wait a second, if they keep me home, why not doing something with myself, such as improving my concentration, improving my inner peace, looking into my feelings, emotions, setting up things there. Shut down a little bit the news. Don't worry, they will be as crap as it was today, in 3 months, in 5 months, because these people don't go away so easy. These fear mongers that are creating this feeling of crisis today, they plan to stay. But they depend on the silent majority. They are actually desperate to get rid of the silent majority today for a very simple reason. The silent majority sit there and you never know what they are doing. Hopefully, they're doing the right thing to themselves, transforming their perspective, having an awakening. And once they have an awakening, once they are red-pilled, as they speak today in these circles, once they are red-pilled, they will see through the smoke screens. They will start to realize, wait a second, simple observation. You want to reset a system you didn't even explain? No, I don't think it's good. I don't give you my support on that. And when many people are doing that, they can steal an election sometimes, but they cannot steal all the elections all the times. They can trick some people sometimes, but they cannot trick all the people all the times.
What worries me a bit on that side of the Great Awakening is, all the red pillars are doesn't seem to have a coherent plan. I mean, they don't have a coherent
plan. They don't have a coherent plan because they also don't follow this inner awakening. They try to awaken other people about exterior factors. You see, the fact that, let's say, now that we talked about Bill Gates, George Soros, all these people, they're the puppets. They're not the masters. The fact that you are blaming them for what happens to you, it's already flawed. It's already serving them. You can't blame them for that. You can be happy now. You can reach inside the background of ecstatic happiness, clarity that exists within yourself every single moment of your life. It's there. It's possible to access it with the right approach, right techniques, patience, and so on. But it's possible. And only then you will be able even to have compassion, true compassion to these people, and stand firm and correct and question in a correct way without falling for all kind of smoke screens, psyops, because let's face it, among the so-called conspiracy theories, there are also conspiracy theories. Some are truths, which are labeled as conspiracy theories, but some are conspiracy theories claim to be truth. So, and how do you discern between them? The answer is inside you. It's true, we are so unused with that. We try to fix the world for our problems. And that became a habit, that became actually a vice that we have today, and we need to solve it inside our being. And that's the hope that we have, and the work that has to be done. And actually is the same. I mean, you had the red pillars, as you call it, which are as propagandistic as the other side. Just that they are resorting on other facts. The statistics of the Great Reset clearly indicate that their solution might work. And from might work, they twist it a little bit in, for sure it works, and then they twist it a little more, it's the only solution. It's a little twist, but there are real statistics that they have there. Yes, we are in a kind of a difficult situation. We create an unsustainable economy. We created an unsustainable society. It's a reality. But we don't even know why we created it. Why do we have an appetite to create constantly an unsustainable society? They don't even look into that. And that's wrong. Because they don't look into themselves. They will recognize the same appetite of creating an unsustainable society in their own life. They have an unsustainable life. And, of course, but the other side, the opposition, so to speak, have exactly the same attitude. They blame Bill Gates. They blame Bill Gates trying to, genetically modify the society to be more compliant. Excuse me. Society is compliant today, before the genetics, before the modification, the genetic modification. The society was compliant to Hitler's doctrines. They embraced Hitler and they created a world chaos. The Japanese embraced the doctrine, the Italians embraced the same doctrine, the Hungarians embraced the same doctrine, many countries embraced the same doctrine, and I'm talking people, not some lunatics. The society embraced the Bolsheviks. Sorry?
Is it a failure of democracy?
Democracy, the power of the people. That's democracy, isn't it? Demokratos. Demos, the power of demos. But
people
you cannot
handed
have
over
power.
the power to Hitler, for example.
Of course, they handed it because they don't own it. They didn't realize the power is me. I cannot hand it to you. The only thing we can do together is to cooperate. That's all we can do. So the very idea of representation and so on need to be reshaped from inside out. As long as you try to fix your problems through representation, it will fail. How is a leader that you elected responsible for your miserable day? How can it be? He cannot, but he forgets about that, and he's afraid you will not vote for him, and he tries to fix you. How can you fix you? Well, you find all kinds of substances put in the food, the genetic modification. He's honestly trying to fix you because he didn't fix himself. Otherwise, if he would have fixed himself, he would realize, wait a second, guys, I can't be responsible for you. The solution is inside each of you. But who votes for such a leader? Who is electing a leader who says, I'm very happy you elected me because I can't do anything for yourself except showing you how to cure yourself. Thank you very much, but we don't like that. We like you to come and fix our problems. The situation was aggravated when people started to advertise. They claim, choose me to represent you to solve your problems. And, of course, anyway, we have an appetite to give somebody else our problems. And when we heard that, it was so convenient. Oh, yes, finally someone who speaks. Yes.
So it's a consciousness problem between what you can say, people who are having this power mentality, and in a way it will always be this house of cards mentality where it's about maintaining the power until somebody is stronger than you. And then there's the rest who don't really want to take care of their life and don't really want to look inside to
but
challenge.
also those who are becoming powerful, they also don't want to take responsibility for their life. They put their life on the shoulders of the rest of humanity. That's the problem, because should they have the experience of the inner battle, so to speak, with themselves, they will not have such idiotic ideas. They will be immediately saying, look, situation is more complex. Let's not try to fix it like that. Let's not artificially interfere in this. Let's teach people fishing instead of creating artificial food that smells and tastes like fish.
Do you think Klaus Schwab is having nightmares? Do you think Bill Gates is having nightmares for the things they do?
I don't think they have nightmares. They have a life that is like a nightmare. That's the problem. I think they, as I said, they suffer of having it too small and too little. I mean, soul wise. I don't think there is a personal problem always there. And as long as we don't look at it, we will not solve the problem of many. And of course, in this respect, there is another side effect that we have seen, you and me have seen, working for improving the self-awareness. You see, in the ancient time, throughout centuries, millennia, there was this institution of spiritual guidance. People looked to some other people, to get guidance. But you go with the right attitude to get guidance only when you try to fix your problems with your efforts. Then the guidance is useful. But when you go to a person with the hope that he or she will carry you on the path, he or she will fix you, the very institution, if you say, of spiritual guidance is futile. And this is what we see today. In the last 2 centuries, one by one, different authentic spiritual lineages, authentic sources of inspiration for human development and transformation disappeared. Why? Because nobody likes them. Nobody wants a guru, because a guru teach you fishing. The guru doesn't come to you saying, I can fix your problems. No problem. The guru says, you have a problem. Actually, the first step into acknowledging guidance is realizing that you need the guidance and it's a difficult moment for yourself. And we're not ready. We are so snowflake-like. We are melting the moment somebody is telling something that reminds us about a problem we might have. We melt down and we get triggered. Shut up! Don't speak like this, because you remind me about some problems I have. Which problems? I don't even want to look at. Well, that's the very definition of the opposite of spiritual guidance.
And plus, people don't want to learn fishing. They just want to be fixed. So they help you.
They just want to be fixed. Eventually, to be given a pill that is solving your hunger problem forever. Can you solve that? Irrespective to, wait a second, did you really study it? Can we suppress a function that appeared in nature as a bright conclusion of this intelligent design, that it designed everything so precisely and marvelous? Can we just cancel a function like that with a pill without immense dramatic consequences? And more importantly, without learning the lesson? Would that lesson not come back to us in millions of other big crises? Of course, yes. This is what we see today. We see a reoccurring process of lessons that we refused. We try to suppress. We refuse to look in that direction. And that's the meaning of guidance today. It was always the meaning of it. And because of this mentality that we developed, because of this mentality of being fixed, we can't be guided to the solution. So the Great Awakening has a problem with this. You can't alone travel through the Great Awakening, you need a little bit of guidance. And my hope is that people will start to look for guidance, genuine spiritual guidance. And when they find it, follow it. Not follow it blindly, because no spiritual guidance that is authentic asks you to follow blindly. Actually, is giving you methods to check. My spiritual guide didn't give me anything to believe. He always asked me, don't believe me, check. Practice this exercise, see if it works. I checked, I practiced, it worked. It gave exactly the results expected. I even measured the results, and it was what expected. Even sometimes exceptional results. Totally out of chart results. Even medically unexplained results. Still measurable. So I was never asked, working also with spiritual development and guidance, I was never asked, because that's not authentic, to believe in something, but to check for yourself. Yeah. So that's why I hope this process of Great Awakening will be actually a trigger of searching for guidance, authentic guidance. Well, there's a lot more to talk about, but let's save it for later. I hope our talk gave some answers and gave some insights to a lot of people. What do you say?
Definitely. I mean, this is as you say, it's just scratching the surface in a way, because there's still, the solutions. I think we need to deepen the talk about the actual solutions. I'm not sure everybody have experience with that yet, and that might be what we could talk about in the future podcast. But now at least we have
you are very welcome. If you have other interesting angles on this, just propose it. And for those of you who are listening to us, just a reminder, I'm inviting in these podcasts listeners, people which I know, or just those of you who are writing and you have an interesting angle on some topics that are of interest today. And we take it up in a dialogue here, and I can share some views from this synthesis that I've made through practice and through direct experience between the solutions offered by the spiritual science and the science of today. Thank you, Sahaj, for joining again this journey through the world today. And of course, let's make possible this great awakening, search for guidance, search for authenticity in this guidance. And please share this. If you find something useful, share it with the others. Remember that being alive is a continuous transformation. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Continuous Transformation podcast. For more episodes, articles, and events, visit advaitananda.com.